Amir Wu was like, Wallahi, Gilbert, you suck. Giving every Gilbert hater ammunition for generations to come. Nukes for generations to come against this man. As one of the very few Gilbert fans out there, these stocks are at an all-time low. And keep in mind, Gilbert and the Westwood faction had actually beaten the Kure faction. Last we heard, the recent update of this feud. Of course, this was off screen, so it doesn't really matter. Overall, I think this will be good for his character, and I'll explain why eventually when I get to it. The chapter is called Far Away. Now, it's actually in reference to what happens with Gilbert, as well as a few other things here, because there are very interesting things. Like, this was a very good chapter, but it starts off with Saw Pang attacking Gaolang. So the sparring match between Saw and Gao is happening at this point, and Saw Pang is just unleashing a lot of punches, just a lot of straight punches, different trajections at Gaolang. Obviously, Gaolang at this point is dodging them with relative ease here, so the speed that Saw Pang had did catch Gaolang by surprise. But as I said in my chapter review and breakdown, when I got to that part between Saw and Gaolang, because Gaolang is likely a pre-initiative user, now that he knows how fast he is, he's basically gonna input read him at that point, and Saw will find it incredibly more difficult to actually land any attacks on Gaolang here. But we'll see how Saw actually copes with what's happening here, because Gaolang, he goes with his own counter, straight left punch, pretty basic, going for where Saw Pang was, but Saw Pang, he ducks it, and it seems like he's about to do an uppercut. Gaolang catches on, and he follows up his counter, making sure, of course, that Saw Pang doesn't actually get his little uppercut or any other attack to come through. He follows that up with a kick from his left leg, and it goes whoosh. Saw Pang ducks even lower, avoiding the kick, but he also backs out as well. Gaolang notices that Saw actually retreated here, which is something he did not expect with Saw Pang, because of course Saw Pang, he's got a lot of guts. He usually is the type of guy to bulldoze his way through things, and I think he learned from the Berserk Bowl tournament, because one of the reasons he ends up losing to Rito here is because he had injured his head in his fight against Cosmo. I might get to that one day whenever I end up looking specifically at that fight. But yeah, point is, Saw Pang is not reckless, or he's less reckless at this point in time. He's handling his fighting with a bit more wisdom here. And Gaolang, he sort of gives Saw his props here. He's like, you've improved in this aspect, as well as, of course, his faster strikes all around. He's just grown as a fighter. Saw Pang is like, let's go, hyping himself up before charging in all over again with his guard up and everything, and they just start throwing fists at each other at very close ranges. So this is a very dangerous game that we've seen here. Saw's throwing his hands, trying to get Gaolang somewhere. Gaolang is doing the same, and they haven't really gotten any shots off at this point in time. They're just going at each other at this point. And something that's interesting to notice here is that though this is close range combat at this point, it's not the same as like the Wulong, as well as I forgot who this guy from who he fought in the Real Champions tournament, who also specialized in close quarters combat. It's not like that. It's more of a slugfest looking approach, but they're within their lethal ranges, and that's what the narrator says here. One move could basically spell doom for them at this point, and we see Saw is incredibly pleased with this. Like, he says this is awesome, and I love the paneling at this point because it's a little bit more creative. It stands out more because, most of the time Soundfish doesn't do this type of paneling, but it's very drawn out paneling. It's even there in the drafts as well. Just incredible stuff. Saw is basically thinking about how he is feeling in the moment while being in this very dangerous type of situation, trying to get the better out of Gaolang. He hasn't fought someone like attacked Gaolang before, so he's getting this very big rush of just energy that he explains is coming from his core here, and it's sort of motivating him to move further. So he's getting, you know, a little flow state boof, or buff I should say. But then we see Gaolang, he sort of throws a straight right punch after of course the many punches that he was throwing. It's a straight right punch as he's standing up. Saw he is ducked it again. This time, instead of going in like he did the first time, he basically pushes him back with a kick here, trying to throw Gaolang off balance probably in this case here, as well as of course giving himself some space for other attacks to follow up with. And he charges at him with what seems like it's either going to be a left hook, you know, going downwards, or a straight left punch at this point. But as he throws that, Gaolang sees that gap because he's very open as he's doing this. He sees the gap, boom, with his right elbow straight to the chin, going downwards. And at this point, I thought Saw was done, because like that's a lethal shot, obviously. And Saw is getting knocked out at this point, at least that's how it seems like it. He goes down slowly, but he then of course manages to regain his consciousness a bit, because of course he has a more powerful skull and endurance as far as that's concerned. So he maintains balance while he was on the ground, and he charges up an uppercut. And as he goes for the uppercut, because at this point Gaolang is still facing downward from launching his elbow in the way that you would launch like a downward hook. But by the time Saw has launched his uppercut, Gaolang has moved to his right and strikes him in his chin again, this time with a left-handed strike. And you would think that's it, but Saw Pang, he maintains consciousness still he refuses to fall here. And at this point, Gaolang is like, yeah, you got great endurance, bro. And Saw starts charging at him again, and then we transition over, because we hear pow pow pow. We can assume Saw Pang didn't land a single strike on Gaolang. Unfortunately, this is how it is with the S tiers. It's just hard to hit them once they know what you're doing. And Saw is like, yeah, I figured you would have gone further than me, transitioning with him laying on the ground. And he even says like it was a disgraceful performance, like he shouldn't even be called his rival at this point. That's how bad Saw thinks he did here. And Gaolang's like, bro, I'm still halfway where I want to be. So Gaolang, of course, he's looking, you know, to the stars at this point, to the Shen Wulongs at this point. And he adds on to that he's also been defeated as well, and all those defeats have sort of made him the man that he is today. So he's mentioning this to try and motivate Saw Pang to not, you know, lose heart at what is seemingly an L performance for him. Saw Pang still has room to grow, but so does Gaolang. You know, he's not invincible, basically, is what Gaolang is trying to tell Saw. Like, I'm reachable and I'm still growing here. And he's telling Saw Pang to join him where he is, talking about the level of power and stuff like that. So we see Gaolang, he's trying to, you know, hype up his boy here, you know. And Saw's like, no way, bro, I'm actually going to go beyond you, whatever it takes, basically. So Saw hasn't lost too much heart here, it seems, or either he regained, you know, his motivation, as he probably realized Gaolang was trying to motivate him as well. And Saw's like, you better be ready for when I'm actually beyond your level at that point. Gaolang, of course, starts bantering with him, because of course Saw is sort of bantering with him when he's saying he's going to surpass him and he should be careful. Gaolang's like, okay, so you still have that big mouth of yours and you carry on talking like you're the guy. But he then mentions that the final showdown is happening soon and that they should have another match before that point. So I do wonder if this is an indication that maybe Gaolang and Saw Pang will actually be in the same team here. I would like for that to be the case, and they do mention that they're trying to save Oma as well, because he wants to be the guy to help Oma. So of course they're part of the Kengan side as far as that's concerned. And yeah, that's the end. A very good part of the chapter, even though it's most of the chapter actually. The fight itself was pretty good. I love the little character moment that Gaolang had with Saw. Just great way to start off the chapter in my opinion. But we then transition over to Yan and the worm. Now this is a very interesting portion of the chapter because Yan is trying to gather their forces at this point. Now previously I had said they were just gonna throw everything at the Kengan Association, so we're talking even all the fodder. Not so much, it seems. Fu is basically taking stock of all the forces that they have, and he says Yan has basically 6 direct subordinates, which includes Fuzan, so 5 other direct subordinates, and 100 other dudes. But out of those 100, 2 of them are like actually good or could be useful. The rest are just straight fodder. And Yan's like, damn, talk about downsizing. Like, they have a lot of forces, but not too much potential going on, at least on the lower end of things. Because we have to remember they still have, well, they do have some heads, unfortunately. They lost Nico and Luhan, unfortunately. But Fuzan starts talking, he's like, are you sure you want to bring them over? Because these people that you're asking about are going to be hard to rein in. And Fuzan, I was very confused by this, because he's not talking about the fodder, right? Because he was like, why do you really want to go all in? He's talking about a different set of forces here. And Yan is like, as long as they finish the job, bro, they can do what they want at this point. So we're talking about people that the worm don't necessarily control here. So people that are like, let's say for example, your Nikos, right? Because we'll see a word that's used for these people. Because Yan is like, please gather our guests. Because it's like, if there's ever a time for them to ever be useful, it's now. So we do know that Nico was referred to as a guest to the worm, and they seem to have inherited his bum ass in the sense that they barely do anything for the worm or anything in general until this point. So they like Nico in that way. But yeah, these are people that are probably the cream of the crop that the worm can actually put out there to this match. Fuzan is like, I had a feeling you would say that, and what did you look at that? Your subordinates or direct subordinates, your hand-picked fodder, and the guests. I've already bought all of them to Japan at this point. So Fuzan ahead of the curve when it comes to what Yan was thinking here. Fuzan's a very good asset in this way. You can see why he ended up being a direct subordinate of Yan. But of course we see them in a panel, and one of them is going to initiate a discussion of Nico number 3 again, because they're wearing the similar type of hoodie or cloak type of scenario. But Fuzan's like, even though they're here, we're a little bit short-handed, and we see a panel of Nicholas, the real Nicholas. So he's one of either the guests, well, he's likely a guest actually, and it makes sense considering what Fuzan said and what the real Nicholas is actually capable of, because he's killed, you know, civilians and other soldiers. It would make sense that the real Nicholas is hard to rein in. So I do wonder how transferable that is to the other guests that Fuzan has brought in here. But he still says they're short-handed even with that, because we're missing one other here, because they're not counting Lohan and Nico. And Fuzan is asking, like, how many soldiers are the Westwood faction actually sending at this point? And Yan is like, yeah, about that. The Westwood faction ain't doing so good right now, it seems. They're having some difficulties, and we go far away. Now, this is where I'll talk about the title a bit before we go to the Gilbert angle, or the Gilbert part of the chapter, which is really the last part of the chapter. The far away comes from probably where these guests come from, talking about the title of the video. But the next far away is also far away where they are right now, because they seem to be in Arabia or somewhere else that is far away from Japan, somewhere in the Middle East of Africa, I would be guessing that because we see two groups standing against each other. The Westwood faction, of course, representing the actual West. So Gilbert, you probably have his goons there as well on one side, and you have the Middle East Westwood faction group that are on the other side. Hostile faces all around. Gilbert's like, hey yo bro, what's going on here? Seems like things are not going too well there, and we end up hearing what is actually going wrong here. We have Amir Wu coming here saying the Middle East Westwood faction group is pulling out of the war with the Kure clan at this point. Now that's very interesting, but I'll talk about why that's interesting a little bit later. Gilbert not too pleased with this. He's like, Amir, are you actually betraying the Westwood faction right now, bro? Gilbert is not happy about this. And we see Gilbert's, look now. He's been looking more and more like Edward. Obviously, he's his clone, but now he's sort of settled into the Edward, look, let's say. But Amir Wu starts elaborating on what he means by this. He basically says the Middle East Wu clan members that are part of the Westwood faction don't recognize him as their leader. We don't recognize you, we don't feel you, dog. And Amir is like, at least Edward had charisma. Talking about the aura of Gilbert Wu, or of Edward Wu here. And he says he's more like a brat in comparison to him, a rebellious brat that is self-indulgent. And they won't swear their lives to him. And Gilbert's like, you son of a bitch, bro. Cause that's like a huge, that's a mad disrespect. And this is how some of the Kengan fan base actually feels about Gilbert. They mostly see him as a ripoff of the original, and also just not as entertaining or as confident. Now, what I think is very interesting here is that they talk about Gilbert's charisma, or Edward's charisma. I mean, really, I'm mixing them, Gilbert and Edward, even though they're exactly the same person. But Edward was the one who started this war, because it was him killing a Wu clan member off screen, by the way, that started the domino effect of this war. And he's dead now. Gilbert is having to basically clean up his mess, and has been doing that. Even though he's faced obstacle after obstacle, like he had to take power for himself against his uncle. He has also beaten the Kure clan at some point as well, even though that happened off screen. So he literally has a W in his name, even though it doesn't matter as much because it was off screen. I find it very interesting that they have more respect for Edward in this way, because personally I get where they're coming from when it comes to the charisma. The problem is the results of Edward, and I've talked about this extensively, why I thought his death was deserved and even perfect as well, which is probably one of my hottest takes on in Kengan ever, really. But yeah, Amir Wu has basically demands of loyalty when it comes to whether or not he'll actually follow Gilbert as well. And he says, look, what about the Kure clan's demon? Their big guy, Kure Ryan. We see Kure Ryan, he's in the panel. He's killed a lot of Westwood faction members. Obviously, he's killed Alan, he's killed Sean, he's killed a bunch of other fodder, honestly. Amir's like, if you want our loyalty, kill Ryan first. We need a demonstration of your power. So they at least want the power that Gilbert had, or even more than that. Now we know Alan believed that he was the greatest thing that the Westwood faction has produced. The Westwood faction hasn't really seen that. And to also be fair, we haven't either. I think Gilbert has healing factor based on the things that we have seen here, but we're not certain of exactly how strong Gilbert is. But he's supposed to be powerful, right? He needs a display of power in order for him to be somewhat taken seriously as an antagonist as well, and seemingly to have Amir and the Middle East group follow him as well. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Ultimately, I think this is good for Gilbert because we get to see him develop more as a leader. The Westwood faction, at least from what I can tell, is a lot bigger than the Kure clan and the Wu clan, and so seeing how Gilbert maneuvers his way of getting out of the shadow of, Edward Wu, the original, to how he handles the Wu clan and Kure clan, it will be very interesting to see how that ends up going, because we still got some time before the actual tournament here, or more so the battle, because it's not really a tournament. But yeah, that's the chapter. Lot of stuff actually happened here, and it was a very good chapter. I was very much entertained with what was going on here. But yeah, let me know what you think. Don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.